February 6, 1981, Clarence House, 6:23 a.m. Lady Diana Spencer stood in front of her full-length mirror, pinching the skin on her waist until it hurt. In 3 weeks, she would marry Prince Charles in front of 750 million people worldwide. Her wedding dress, designed for a size 10, now hung loose on her shrinking frame. Diana had lost over 20 pounds in just 2 months, but instead of concern, the palace staff praised her pre-wedding discipline. What they didn't realize was that Diana wasn't dieting for her wedding. She was disappearing, one skipped meal at a time. This is the heartbreaking story of how the world's most photographed woman fought a silent battle with an eating disorder, while the palace looked the other way. But what nobody knows is how Diana's eating disorder started as a cry for help and became a dangerous obsession that nearly killed her. The beginning of the battle, December 1980, the engagement period. When Diana's engagement to Prince Charles was announced, the world fell in love with the shy kindergarten teacher who would become a princess. But behind the fairy tale, Diana was struggling with overwhelming pressure. Lady Diana, her dresser Elizabeth, commented, "You seem to be losing weight. Are you feeling all right?" Diana forced a smile, "Just nervous about the wedding. I want to look perfect." But it wasn't about looking perfect. Diana had discovered something powerful. In a life where she had no control over her schedule, her public appearances, or even her private conversations, she could control what she ate. When Charles made thoughtless comments about her appearance, "A bit chubby here, don't you think?" he had said, patting her waist, Diana found a way to fight back silently. If he wanted her thinner, she would become invisible. The first skipped meal felt like rebellion. The second felt like power. By the 3rd week, Diana realized she might be losing control of something she thought she was controlling. But wait, you haven't seen how the palace responded to Diana's dramatic weight loss. The palace's dangerous response. January 1981, enabling the disorder. Instead of concern, Diana's rapid weight loss was met with praise from the palace staff, and even the royal family. "Diana looks absolutely radiant," Queen Elizabeth commented to her lady-in-waiting, "much more suitable for a future queen." The palace press office began highlighting Diana's elegant figure in official statements. Fashion magazines praised her discipline and royal transformation. What they were actually celebrating was the visible manifestation of Diana's psychological distress. Diana's private secretary noticed she was eating less and less at official functions. "Lady Diana, you barely touched your lunch." "I'm just not hungry," Diana replied, a phrase that would become her constant refrain. But behind closed doors, Diana was experiencing the terrifying symptoms of starvation, dizziness, exhaustion, hair loss, and an obsessive preoccupation with food. The more praise she received for her appearance, the more convinced Diana became that her worth was tied to her size. Hold up, Diana's wedding dress fittings revealed just how dangerous her weight loss had become. The wedding dress crisis, March 1981, a shocking discovery. During her final wedding dress fitting, something shocking happened. The dress, originally made for a size 10, was now too large for Diana's dramatically smaller frame. "Lady Diana," the seamstress said with concern, "we'll need to take in the dress again. That's the 3rd alteration." Diana felt a sick sense of pride. She was disappearing, and it felt like winning. But Elizabeth Emanuel, her dress designer, was worried. "Diana, darling, you look quite thin. Are you eating properly?" "I'm fine," Diana insisted. "I've never felt better." That was a lie. Diana was experiencing the classic symptoms of anorexia. She felt cold constantly, had trouble concentrating, and was obsessed with food while simultaneously terrified of eating. The palace physician, Dr. Michael Linnett, was quietly called in for a consultation. "Lady Diana's weight loss is concerning," he told the Queen's private secretary. "She's lost nearly 25 pounds in 3 months. This isn't healthy pre-wedding nerves. What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting she needs help, psychological help." The response was immediate and devastating. "That's not possible. The wedding is in 2 months. Lady Diana just needs to maintain her current regimen." But you're not ready for what Diana's eating disorder did to her on her wedding day. The wedding day struggle. July 29, 1981, St. Paul's Cathedral. On the morning of her wedding, Diana could barely stand without feeling dizzy. She had eaten nothing but half an apple and some tea in the past 24 hours. "Diana, you look pale," her mother Frances observed. "Have you eaten breakfast?" "I couldn't. Too nervous." But it wasn't nerves. Diana was trapped in the cycle of restriction that defines eating disorders. The thought of food made her panic. As she walked down the aisle of St. Paul's Cathedral, Diana felt like she was floating, not from joy, but from malnutrition. The 25-foot train of her dress felt impossibly heavy, because she had no strength left. During the ceremony, Diana swayed slightly, gripping Charles's arm for support. "Are you all right?" Charles whispered. Diana nodded, but she wasn't all right. She was starving herself to death while the world celebrated her fairy tale. Don't miss this detail. What happened during the honeymoon that shocked Charles? The honeymoon revelation. August 1981. Royal Yacht Britannia. During their Mediterranean honeymoon, Charles finally witnessed the full extent of Diana's eating disorder. At their first formal dinner aboard the royal yacht, Diana moved food around her plate without eating it. "Diana, you haven't touched your meal," Charles observed. "I'm not hungry. You said that at lunch and breakfast." Diana excused herself and went to the bathroom, where she broke down crying. The stress of eating in front of Charles, combined with her guilt about not eating, created an impossible situation. Charles followed her. "Diana, what's wrong? You've barely eaten in days." "I can't," Diana whispered. "Every time I try to eat, I feel sick. I feel guilty. I feel like I'm failing." "Failing at what?" "At being thin enough, pretty enough, perfect enough for you." Charles was shocked. He hadn't realized his casual comments about her appearance had contributed to this dangerous spiral. "Diana, I want you to eat. I want you to be healthy. But for someone with anorexia, it's never that simple." Diana's brain had been rewired to see food as the enemy and thinness as safety. This is where everything gets more dangerous. Diana's post-honeymoon crisis. The return to reality. September 1981, Buckingham Palace. When Charles and Diana returned from their honeymoon, the palace staff were alarmed by Diana's appearance. She was gaunt, exhausted, and clearly unwell. "Your Royal Highness," Dr. Linnett told Charles privately, "your wife is suffering from a serious eating disorder. She needs immediate medical intervention." "What kind of intervention?" "Hospitalization, nutritional rehabilitation, psychiatric care." Charles was horrified. "Doctor, we can't have the Princess of Wales in a psychiatric facility. Think of the headlines." "Sir, with respect, think of her life. Princess Diana's current weight is dangerously low. If this continues, she could suffer organ failure." But the palace had made its decision. Diana's image was more important than Diana's health. Instead of proper treatment, Diana was assigned a nutritional advisor, whose job was to make sure she ate enough to function publicly while maintaining her elegant figure. It was a cosmetic solution to a life-threatening problem. But wait, Diana's eating disorder was about to get much worse. The pregnancy crisis. November 1981. A dangerous discovery. When Diana discovered she was pregnant with William, her eating disorder entered a new, more dangerous phase. "I need to eat for the baby," she told herself. But her anorexic brain interpreted this as, "Now I have to be perfect for two people." The pressure of maintaining a perfect pregnancy while struggling with an eating disorder was overwhelming. Diana would force herself to eat during the day for public appearances, then restrict severely in private to compensate. Dr. Linnett monitored her weight gain closely. "Princess Diana is not gaining weight at a healthy rate," he reported to the palace. "What does that mean for the pregnancy?" "It means both mother and baby are at risk." Still, no proper intervention was offered. Diana was given prenatal vitamins and told to try harder to eat regularly. The message was clear: the health of the heir was important, but Diana's psychological well-being was not. You're not going to believe how Diana's eating disorder affected her pregnancy. The hidden pregnancy struggle. 1982. Pregnant and starving. During her pregnancy with William, Diana experienced the unique horror of having an eating disorder while carrying a child. She would eat normally at public events, then panic about the calories, and restrict severely afterward. "I felt like I was poisoning myself and my baby," Diana later confided to a friend. "But I couldn't stop. The thought of gaining weight terrified me more than the thought of hurting William." This is the cruel paradox of eating disorders during pregnancy. The logical mind knows the baby needs nutrition, but the disordered mind sees pregnancy weight gain as failure. Diana's obstetrician noticed her inconsistent weight gain. Some weeks she gains nothing, other weeks she gains too much. This pattern is concerning. What he was seeing was the binge-restrict cycle common in eating disorders. Diana would starve herself, then eat large amounts when her body demanded nutrition, then feel guilty and restrict again. The palace's response was to have Diana followed by a nutritionist who monitored her public eating but ignored her private struggles. Don't miss this revelation: how Diana's eating disorder affected baby William. The impact on William. June 1982. William's birth. When Prince William was born, he was smaller than expected, a possible result of Diana's inconsistent nutrition during pregnancy. Diana felt overwhelming guilt. "I've already failed as a mother," she told her sister Sarah through tears. But the eating disorder didn't end with William's birth. If anything, the pressure to bounce back quickly made it worse. Princess Diana looks absolutely marvelous just weeks after giving birth, the press gushed, not realizing they were praising the visible effects of starvation. Diana was breastfeeding while severely restricting her food intake, a dangerous combination that left both mother and baby undernourished. When William had feeding difficulties, Diana blamed herself. Maybe he can sense that I'm not eating properly, she worried. Dr. Linnet tried again to intervene. Your Royal Highness, Princess Diana needs proper treatment for her eating disorder. It's affecting her ability to care for the prince. The palace's response was to hire more nannies, removing the stress of childcare from Diana instead of addressing the underlying problem. But here's where everything changes. Diana's moment of clarity, the wake-up call. September 1982, the breaking point. 3 months after William's birth, Diana collapsed during a private function at Buckingham Palace. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. I was standing there, holding William, and suddenly the room started spinning. Diana later recalled, I thought I was going to drop my baby. Charles rushed to her side as she fainted. Get Dr. Linnet immediately. When Diana regained consciousness, she was in the palace medical facility with an IV in her arm. Your blood sugar is dangerously low, Dr. Linnet explained. Your body is shutting down. For the first time, Diana faced the reality that her eating disorder wasn't just hurting her. It was endangering her ability to be a mother. Dr. Linnet, what's wrong with me? Diana asked. You have anorexia nervosa, Your Royal Highness. It's a serious mental health condition, but it's treatable. Hearing the diagnosis spoken aloud was both terrifying and liberating for Diana. This is where Diana's real recovery journey began. The secret treatment. October 1982. Finding help. Unable to get proper support from the palace, Diana began seeking help privately. She started seeing Dr. Maurice Lipsedge, a psychiatrist who specialized in eating disorders, under the strictest secrecy. Princess Diana, you're not weak or vain, Dr. Lipsedge told her during their first session. You're suffering from a serious illness that developed as a way to cope with impossible circumstances, but I should be able to just eat normally, Diana protested. I have everything anyone could want. Eating disorders aren't about food, Your Royal Highness. They're about control, perfectionism, and often trauma. Your brain learned to use food restriction as a way to manage overwhelming emotions. For the first time, Diana understood that her eating disorder wasn't a moral failing, it was a coping mechanism that had become dangerous. The therapy sessions, conducted in complete secrecy, became Diana's lifeline. But wait, you haven't seen the most shocking part of Diana's recovery. The palace's continued denial. 1983-1985. Fighting alone. Even as Diana worked with Dr. Lipsedge to recover from her eating disorder, the palace continued to ignore the severity of her condition. When Diana asked for more flexibility in her schedule to attend therapy appointments, she was told, Your Royal Highness must maintain her commitments. Personal issues cannot interfere with royal duties. Diana was forced to schedule therapy sessions around official engagements, sometimes going weeks without proper support during difficult periods. It felt like I was fighting 2 battles, Diana later confided. One against my eating disorder, and one against a system that wanted me to look perfect while falling apart inside. The palace press office continued to praise Diana's discipline and elegant figure, unknowingly encouraging the very behaviors that were destroying her health. When Diana occasionally appeared to have gained healthy weight, palace staff would make subtle comments about her needing to watch herself. You're not ready for Diana's breakthrough moment. The turning point. 1985, Diana's rebellion. During a particularly difficult period in her recovery, Diana made a revolutionary decision. She would prioritize her health over palace approval. I started eating lunch in public, Diana told Dr. Lipsedge. Really eating, not just moving food around my plate. How did that feel? Terrifying, but also powerful. I realized that recovering from this illness was the most rebellious thing I could do. Diana began to understand that her eating disorder wasn't just personal, it was political. A system that valued her appearance over her health was a system worth rebelling against. She started speaking more openly about the pressures of royal life, laying the groundwork for future discussions about mental health. Food stopped being my enemy when I realized the real enemy was the expectation that I be perfect, Diana reflected. Don't miss this detail. How Diana's recovery changed everything. The recovery journey. 1986-1992, healing and growth. Diana's recovery from her eating disorder wasn't linear or easy. There were setbacks, difficult days, and moments when the old patterns tried to reassert themselves. But with proper therapy and her own determination, Diana began to heal. I learned that my worth wasn't determined by my dress size, she said. I learned that I could be beautiful and strong at any weight. Diana's recovery coincided with her growing independence from Charles and the palace. As she became psychologically stronger, she became more confident in challenging the systems that had failed her. She began supporting eating disorder charities, though she couldn't speak openly about her own experiences due to palace restrictions. "I want to help people who are going through what I went through," Diana told her staff, "but I have to be careful how I do it." Here's the most important part: Diana's legacy in eating disorder awareness. The legacy of speaking out. 1995, the Panorama interview. In her famous BBC Panorama interview, Diana finally spoke publicly about her eating disorder. Though in coded language, "I had bulimia for a number of years, and that's like a secret disease. It's a repetitive pattern which is very destructive to yourself." While Diana mentioned bulimia rather than anorexia, possibly to protect her privacy about the full extent of her struggles, her willingness to discuss eating disorders on television was revolutionary. "You inflict it upon yourself because your self-esteem is at a low ebb, and you don't think you're worthy or valuable," she continued. These words reached millions of people suffering in silence with eating disorders. For the first time, a prominent public figure had connected eating disorders to emotional pain rather than vanity. The final truth: how Diana changed everything. The transformation. Diana's impact on eating disorder awareness. Diana's openness about her struggles, even in limited terms, transformed public understanding of eating disorders. She showed that eating disorders affect people of all backgrounds. She connected eating disorders to emotional trauma rather than vanity. She demonstrated that recovery was possible with proper support. She highlighted the role of external pressure in triggering these conditions. Most importantly, Diana's example showed that seeking help for mental health issues was a sign of strength, not weakness. The truth: Diana's eating disorder wasn't about food. It was about power, control, and the impossible pressure of being perfect in the public eye. The palace's failure to provide proper support nearly cost Diana her life, but Diana's recovery became one of her greatest victories. She transformed her pain into purpose, using her experience to help others struggling with similar battles. Her legacy in mental health awareness continues today through William and Harry, who have made mental health advocacy central to their royal work. Diana proved that you can survive the systems that try to break you. Sometimes the most radical act is simply taking care of yourself.